My name is Philip Clark, and I worked on Dave with his new autobiography. It was my great privilege to do so. We're about to hear, as a kind of a scene setter, Dave's song "Living on a Thin Line," and then I will bring the man out himself. And the format is Dave and I will talk for about 40 minutes, and then we'll open it out to the audience for any questions. But first, here is "Living on a Thin Line."
There's no England now. All the wars that were won or lost somehow don't seem to matter very much anymore. All the lies we were told, all the lives of the people running around their castles are burned. We're the same as we ever were. Living on a thin line. Tell me now, what are we supposed to do? Living on a thin line. Tell me now, what are we supposed to do? Living this way each day's a dream. Tell me now, what are we supposed to do? Living on a thin line. Tell me now, what are we supposed to do? Now another century nearly gone. Working?
Yeah.
Hey, good to see you.
Woo!
Hello. Great to see you. It should be a round of applause for Philip Clark.
Thank you, Dave.
That's all right.
Yeah.
It gets worse now. So, what we're doing?
I think we're talking about your new autobiography, "Living on a Thin Line." And yeah, I mean, why did you choose that as a title? What was the reason? Because it seems to sort of sum up so much about...
That's the point.
I'm just answering the question myself, so...
That's probably right. I think, after all said and done, I think my life and the life of the Kinks really is about living on, if I could get the words out, living on a thin line. It's been like a story of my life in a way, and it's often been a balancing act, like a tightrope thing. So very apropos, I think.
That's one of the things. I mean, one of the things I found really interesting when we were working on the book is.
I thought it would only take a week. 2 years, wasn't it?
A year, I think.
A year for you, but 2 years for me. No,
75 years for you. It's your whole life in the book.
Terrible.
Yeah.
No, some of it was a lot of it was hard work.
It was.
Yeah, but I hope it's worth it. there's some stuff in there that you haven't heard before, read before. There's stuff in it that I haven't heard before. Making the up as I go along. No.
But one of the interesting things I thought when working on the book is, we have this sense of this span of history with the Kinks from from sort of their 64 or 65 to 96 or 97, and this idea the Kinks has this huge history. But in fact, you are saying in the book in 1965, you didn't know if the Kinks were going to last to the end of 1965, let alone 1966. And there were sort of numerous occasions in the history of the band when you felt it almost might sort of crumble and fall apart.
Yes.
But I mean, there is this sense you managed to keep it going. And I mean, what kept the Kinks up and running?
Many times over the years that around I could have called it a day, and especially around the Misfits era, it could have been like the Swan Song or the Elbow. But it's really weird. It's like always had that feeling that it's never over until it's over. Do you get that? It's like, oh, maybe next year, so that I've had enough, and then things kind of situations arise where you have to keep going, and it's like, as long as the music's there, as long as the ideas come and stuff, you tend to just go with the flow. That's the way I've always worked. Is if it feels right, then do it. Maybe it is right. So, despite many down times, the Kinks always seem to rise up to the next event. And so, really curious.
Because even after you worked hard on the Village Green album and it appeared and you were incredibly proud of it, there was even a sense then after that artistic triumph of that.
I was quite happy when we did our first American tour. I was quite disappointed in America.
In '65, you mean?
From like 65. Particularly when I growing up with all this great music from Buddy Holly to Led Belly to wonderful music that became backdrop to my growing up. Fats Domino and Johnny Cash. I didn't mention much in the book, but it's only when you write a book you suddenly realise all the good stuff you left out. Johnny Cash, what an important influence he was on the rock and roll, and also he was a social commentator. He was writing about what was going on in the world around him. So Johnny Cash was a very important influence to the Kinks, both me and Ray. So, oh God, there's so much we could have put in that we didn't.
You have to contain it.
Yeah.
And also, you spoke a lot to me about Little Richard. And
it's a big influence.
You compare him. You say in the book, Pat Boone was a great singer, but Little Richard had this whole other sort of element to his artistry and the sort of sound of.
I can't say enough about Little Richard because he was like the backbone of what was to come. The fact that he grew up by a railway track. It's a great place to grow up and educate yourself through music, because the rhythm of the trains and if you listen to Lucille by Little Richard, you get that vibe of like it's all going to happen. It's going to happen at the next stop on the train. And it's got that feeling of like expectation all the time. And I think that was what, there was a lot of seeds planted in the early rock and roll of that nature. There was like the seeds planted of what was yet to grow into, you know, I think the 50s were an amazing time, really. And I think that Buddy Holly was definitely incredible influence on all the 60s people growing up. It was like, it turned the key, it was like triggered so many young people thinking differently about their music and their art and how they felt. I mean, Holly and Little Richard, of course Elvis, I mean, you can't talk about rock and roll and not mention Elvis, but there's still local influences that are really the balls and the heart of rock, what became rock, hard rock later. And you know, Little Richard was really, really important.
And we talked about the sort of just the sheer sort of visceral sound of the you know of that voice and how that really communicates.
It's like someone singing on a train.
But it's something sort of beyond sort of trains singing. It's
like a mystical event.
Yeah.
That wish we had the record here, Lucille. And I remember saying to Ray that someone ago that I thought Lucille was probably one of the most important rock records of our growing up. And because of the backbeat, the drummer and backbeat and the influence. But also, Ray mentioned another great record with a great backbeat was It's So Easy, Buddy Holly. I mean, he played their two songs back to back. You know, it's kind of like, it's like a, you know, incredible. They're incredible pieces of music. And they tend to be ignored a lot because of everything that came since.
But that sort of, but the backbeat was the sort of, was the foundations, the fundamentals of so much that came.
Yeah, but the fundamentals of a lot of music that came out of New Orleans.
Yeah.
The backbeat, keeping music going and like dancing was a really big thing in the 50s. And it was a means of young people to express themselves, which previously is. I know the big bands were great when I used to listen to my sisters talk about the big bands, like Benny Goodman and Artie Shaw and all these great jazzers that helped make rock and roll the beginnings, really.
Because I guess it isn't so much of a leap from the Basie band to James Brown in a way. That's
well, yeah, the forerunners of what was to come. So, and music has always been such a cultural and social important thing for human beings. It's like, you know, it's how we grow. It teaches us how to grow without there being an educational forces like colleges or universities. I mean, we've got to learn stuff, I know, but I think we also learn an awful lot about ourselves and each other by feeling. And feeling's always been a really important part of my growing up in music, and I think it's crucial getting a good vibe and a good feeling to the early rock and roll when it was starting.
But can I take you back to sort of post-war London? And I mean, I find.
I went to school, yeah.
No, but I find your sort of, your description of this London that's sort of lost now, this post-war London when you're in Muswell Hill, and you say it wasn't really even considered a part of London then. I mean, it's considered obviously North London now, but in the world you a depict of sort of toilets in a shed in the garden and sort of larders, and the whole thing is just it's a world which is completely. Perhaps we might go back to it the way things are going, but it seems like it's a world.
Back to the shed.
Yeah, but it's a world that's evaporated now and is sort of distant in our experience, and to have that sort of world, and then to have these incredible sounds from America sort of entering that world.
It's all relevant, but I remember thinking when after we finished the book, suddenly realised that there was so much more we could have put in there, and I was thinking about what my mum said is we were kids growing up. There was 8 of us, 8 kids growing up in that house in Denmark Terrace, and it was like and we were one of the many working class families that grew up through 2 wars, and my mum and dad did the best they could, but then there was always that feeling that's why I think my family always had Saturday night parties, because they didn't know when they were going to get bomb dropped on them or dropped down dead.
So the knees up you're having now, it could well be the last one, that kind of thing.
Yeah, it was like there was very much that feeling of growing up in North London. You had a good time, but be careful, it ain't gonna last. It was that feeling, it was very prevalent, and our art didn't really take off. In working class, we didn't have artists or filmmakers or at that early part of the 50s, and at the 60s it was a great chance for us all to kind of wake up and think, come on, there's stuff we can do here, like in fashion. Fashion was a bit, nobody bothered with what's well. We just wore the sort of clothes that your dad wore before, like the late 50s, 60s especially. And like, they were interesting times. And I was very fortunate to have grown up during 60s, 70s, and 80s, and still alive. But it's like, life's weird, right?
But there was a sort of message in this music that was coming from America, which was like you had to try and unpick what it meant, and how it worked, and how you could apply it to your own experience growing up in London.
I mean, it's like what happened in the 60s and 70s and 80s, not so much, but later, when art became more normal, art became art, pondering and meditating on these images that rise up in your subconscious and your feelings. I mean, it's quite a modern thing. If you think what went before 1950, it was like, you had to really be well educated to even think of writing a book, writing anything. And so it was a revolutionary epoch, really.
But it seems that your mother, Annie, was I mean, she sort of realised, you say, that music was, you know, a way out.
Yeah, I think
a way out of.
Ray and I were really lucky with our family because the more middle class families at that time were struggling toward a different end to what we were. But I think my mum saw that music had a value that was beyond school and working at the bank, and she was quite an extraordinary woman, and she sensed that we were heading towards different lights and different influences. So we were, both Ray and I were very, very fortunate to growing up in that environment. And of course we had 6 older sisters that were bringing great music into the house. The musicals of like the early 50s, like South Pacific, Oklahoma, all these great pieces of music. You know, it was like a treasure trove of music at the time. And what am I doing there?
Well, I was going to perhaps bring you back. You said earlier, which I thought was really interesting, about this idea, which I think becomes quite sort of important in the Kinks, that you have a good time now because, you know,
it'll blow up tomorrow.
You know, it may not last. It may not last, and you know, thinking of songs like "Where Have All the Good Times Gone" and that kind of thing. I mean, that you know, that sort of thread is a one that runs right through the Kinks.
Yeah, and I think Ray was always kind of a miserable son. If anything bad was going to happen, Ray would think of it first. And I was too busy hanging out at the pub and up the clubs. And, no, there's a balance between the two, I think. You know, it's fascinating, really. But we don't know why we do things, do we? I don't think. It's hard to follow a kind of a life regime of what you're supposed to do or not do. You know, I was never the type of person that could follow trends and stuff. You know, if it felt right, I did it. And that's very much my modus operandi, right up to today, really. It's like music, art is like, you can do anything, and you might get lucky. You know, it's like, who knows? There's no rules about it at all. The only major rule is to make sure you're sincere and then you're enjoying it. Because enjoyment and art go together, don't they, I think? And like dancing is like a very important aspect to being a human being. It's like, you know, and later years in the 80s and 90s especially, I learnt more about how dancing and movement and art helps develop the brain in a different way. When I had my first stroke, hot awful stroke, I can't remember when it was, but 2004.
3, 2000. I should know that. Let me check the book we wrote and I can find out.
Somewhere. 2004, I think.
2004.
And it was a time of, you know, I was lying on my back in the hospital, couldn't move my right side of my body, and I did think, although I've always been a very optimistic sort of person, I did actually think, oh fuck it, that's it. But I think because of the way I've always been, and the way my family was always, the way they acted was like, you know, oh shit, just move on, do something else. We were never really encouraged to wallow in the misery of, which we all go through crap, you know, but we shouldn't hang on to it, all the negative stuff. We need to cleanse ourselves of it and try and move on. But I was lying in a bed in the hospital in Queen Square in London, thinking, that's it, mate, you've had it. Yeah.
But actually, I mean, the book opens with you with that experience of,
yeah, it does. Yeah.
Of this sort of sudden, real health crisis. But the way you talk about it is actually, I mean, it was, you know, obviously it was a trauma, but actually you sort of turned it on its head, and you sort of turned it into a sort of learning experience, and you sort of took
everything you do. It's got it.
Yeah.
You know, I think if you give up, why bother? I mean, you have to keep. You know, what's that Eric Idle thing? Always look on the bright side of life. But it's true, like especially in working class families of the time. If you know, oh, bollocks, so get on with it. You know, move on, see what's around the corner. And I was always had that feeling, the best is yet to come, and all that stuff. You know, it's important to keep those feelings and values.
But immediately you sort of dealt with the immediate crisis, and then there seemed to be this whole kind of a process of learning about how the brain operates and how.
Well, no, that was crucial. It's like,
yeah, and how you can sort of reconnect neural pathways.
My brain wasn't working. I don't think it's doing much better now. But yeah, and I thought, shit, I've got to do something about this.
And that included relearning the guitar.
Relearning guitar and relearning positive imagery. And I never liked school, but it's funny when I had that stroke. I remembered something I learned at school, probably the only thing, apart from reading and writing, that I'd learned from school was the fact that you have to keep going over and over and over and over the same thing all the time to build neural pathways in the brain, or new neural pathways. And in recent years, they've developed things called neuroplasticity, which is a way of the brain can mold into new ideas and thoughts and everything. So we have quite an interesting machine up there.
But the process of relearning the guitar was very painstaking. It took a.
Well, yeah, it was.
Can you explain a little bit about how that worked? How you?
Well, the thing is that you've got to do something. If you're lying on your back, right, and you don't want to die, there's got to be something more to this. I'm not using my mind in a positive or correct way. We can devise all kinds of methods and come to certain realizations about where we are in time. And we can imagine all sorts of things with our mind. It's like, and even making it work better if you're lucky. But again, positive imagery and positive thinking, it takes time, but it works. You know, you have to go over and over and over and over things. But of course, if you open yourself up to the possibilities, you get encouraged by the involvement of what might happen. And that's a big thing, big key in all relearning or learning or anything is the fact that we have to allow our minds to accept what's going on, because we know so much more than we think we do. And I really believe that.
So it was this, I mean, you sort of knew how the guitar worked, but it was sort of channeling that into your body and making the...
I knew, of course I knew how it worked, but it's that the thing that the muscles have memory. I didn't realise before. I had that event, but there's a thing I found out about, it's muscle memory. So all the silly riffs and practicing and the chords and scales and things, it's already in there. You just lost the ability or the connection to these techniques of how to implement these sounds and tunes. So it's important to relearn what they are and keep doing it over and over and over and over again. It's like, it's worth it in the end. But of course, as well, knowing me, there was periods when I had to access relearning parts of guitar, but the impatience, my impatience made me cheat a bit. So I was have to throw in a few things that are good enough. Maybe sometimes that works. Maybe it's not exactly how you would like it, but it's good enough.
And also the experience. I mean, you talked about how your songwriting is, it comes out of emotions and their feelings, and sort of. You say Ray is the sort of guy who sits in the back and observes and sees, sees a Terry and Julie over Waterloo Bridge or whatever.
No,
but I mean, your thing is the songs and feelings, and this, sort of feelings in this experience opened up a whole other vein of sort of songwriting.
Yeah, it was like, in a way, I mean, Ray was, in a way, my greatest teacher and biggest pain in the arse. So it's like, what do you do with that knowledge? Is that you have to, like your mother would have said, it's like, you learn how can you use it, these influences and impressions and input. How do we use it all? It's like, and that's the important thing. I realised more when I got more into a spiritual mode of living, or brought those spiritual elements into my life, that I realised it opened up a vast area of knowledge that I knew nothing of before. And it's all relevant. All the experience is relevant to something. Anyway, enough of that.
And then how did that sort of change the songs you were working on? I mean, on an album like sort of Fractured Minds, for instance.
Well, Fractured Mind was an album I constructed while I was in the hospital, and I couldn't even move my arm properly. But the ideas kept coming. So it's where creativity is really interesting. It's like it seems that as parts of us that are still functioning, even when the physical side of us is not working properly. And I found that really intriguing, and that's why that album, Fractured Minds, came about through thinking about what I was going to do, and the imagination was showing me, maybe try that, or maybe try that. So, an incredible learning experience, that record. So I wrote songs really when I didn't know what I was fucking doing, really. So,
And that's the way you like it. You like the.
Yeah, I do.
Is it the case that you sort of learn how to write a song through the experience of writing the song, and the material in the song, sort of leads you into how to write the song?
I think the big question. You know a lot about music, Flynn. A lot of it is to do with just doing it. I mean, it sounds crass, but like, if you got an idea, you have to be allowed, or allow people around you, like, to get on with it, or try something different. And I must say, I did realise a lot when Reno was starting out, when he was starting to write. I knew that I could help him more by not interfering. Because once you've I know this, I know that, and that's when you kind of get in each other's way. But sometimes we need to allow people to find their feet with certain things. And that was a difficult thought for me. But I think it's very, very important for us to realise that, like with our kids. You know, we watch our kids, we have to allow them to move forward or get up and walk or talk or whatever it is they can do. So a lot of retraining, if you like, is about allowing things to happen, not trying to make everything happen because you want it to.
But as sort of creating an atmosphere and creating a situation where things happen almost despite you, sort of, rather than trying to sort of manufacture them.
Yeah, it's important. I think you've got kids, and anyone. That's why I adore kids, because they have a natural way of imagining what's going to happen and what they're going to do, and it's very pure state. And we need to get back to that kind of state of mind, I think, to find out what the hell we're doing, because we tend to, when you have a stroke, it's obviously very debilitating, and we sometimes try too hard to look for the areas in our mind we need to pursue to get better. Nobody wants to line you back in bed in hospital, no matter what you're going to do. But the mind is incredibly versatile, and the ideas it comes up with, and it's like it's fascinating. The mind is really more interesting in a way of the music, and it's a part of learning and of growing and developing whatever it is. But the thing I always have learned to measure progress by having a good sense of humour, because humour helps you through a lot of dark times, and and it's crucial. Good humour is like crucial to growth of all sorts. I don't even know what I'm talking about.
Just, I mean, you published a memoir about 30 years ago, and at the end of that book, you say so I think it came out in 96 or 97.
Yes.
And that's, when the Kinks are sort of crashed and burnt, except at the end of that book, I don't know how much...
The Kinks have never crashed and burnt.
Well, I mean...
How dare you!
Sorry. I resign. Just like everybody else has resigned this week, I resign. No, but I mean, the Kinks, how can I put it? You no longer ever playing live by 90.
Well, no, it's like... you know what I mean? Like, it's always an ongoing thing, and I think... growing up in a big family, when you help each other, it's not like you're born with, like, that's your job, nobody knows what they're doing. And that's all brought up and structured through ideas and randomness. And so the Kinks really came about by a lot of random, silly ideas. And family was always a big core thing, feeling family. And, all that stuff.
But I think I was going to ask, though, the end of the first book, you...
I'm sorry, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's fine. So the Kinks, they sort of the Kinks stopped playing live. I'll put it around at 96 or 97.
Yeah.
And then you start this book, you know, all these years, so 25 years afterwards, and you've been through this really traumatic health experience. I mean, what does that do, you know, to the way you view your kind of personal history and the history of the Kinks?
Yeah, but the thing, one thing is that it's like an exploration into what you can get away with. Really, it's like trying ideas, like an experiment. And there were many things about growing up with the band The Kinks that I love and appreciate, but that feeling of never giving up, always trying to think that something's going to happen, it's really important to all of us, I think. That feeling of something's going to happen. Because you make things happen like when you think like that.
And I guess that explains why the Kinks went through so many different phases, from the early records to the, you know, to the sort of English period, as it were, with, you know, Village Green, and then moving on to, you know, and the Kinks never kind of stood still stylistically, even though there were sort of veins that go through everything. It constantly moved.
You tell me, Philip. I don't understand any of it, and really, all I know is that if you have that feeling you want to do something, it's difficult to lose that, you know. And like, I don't want to make you really got me. I love you, really got me. It has to be a feeling of newness is what keeps things alive. And holding on to that childlike madness in a way helps you create, I think. It's important, that.
And I mean, what sort of musical ideas are you playing with these days?
Well, I'm probably more interested in music, you know, than I ever was, because you know, when I was 16, I thought I knew 5 chords, and I thought I knew it all. Maybe I did. Maybe that's all you need. But I think when there's that sense of inquiry there, you want to find out. I think it gives us all hope in art, in music, in relationships. It helps develop how we get on with other people. Music is very important in that respect. And sorry, I forgot the question.
Just what sort of musical ideas are you working on with now? I mean, what?
Oh yeah, I'm working on a lot of ideas that I hope to do more music with my sons, which I've recorded with my sons, Daniel and Russell. We worked on an album called Open Road, which, you know, I want to experiment with my own mind, classical or newness of ideas.
And is the guitar at the centre of everything, or could you see working with the electronics?
But it is in the essence that it's the first thing I pick up in the morning.
Is it? Yeah.
But it's not necessarily the last thing.
Before you go to
I
bed?
work on, yeah. So, yeah, I'm very excited about the future and what it holds. And, you know, I think we only really scratch the surface of what human beings are and what we feel and how we, you know, express ourselves. It's all like a learning experience. Why is it so quiet?
Well, I was just about to suggest we should open it up for some questions, then perhaps it won't be so quiet. Is that all right?
Please do, Philip.
Yeah. Okay. So, who has a question first? You.
Do you find, as you get older, the world gets smaller, musically? Because I'm just looking at some of the names on your albums, like Andrew Sandoval, Dennis Dyken. How did they people come into it?
Yeah, I don't know, it's like, I tend to gravitate towards ideas as well as people, so, you know, it's no accident you meet and butt heads with people with different ideas. I think lessons, how the hell do we integrate all these great ideas or great people? And I think, you know, I don't know. What do you think?
I think so myself. The world just gets smaller as you get older. But I think music has a lot to do with it.
Music's got everything to do with it, I think. Music governs a lot about the way we communicate. If I remember when I first heard, there was a guy that I met in Hollywood when I moved to LA in the 80s. And I met this film producer, and we had a few beers and chat, and he said he got into filmmaking because of All Day and All the Night. He said he was in a little town in the outback in Australia, and he heard that record and he said it was like a code. I want to do this, I want to go there. And it gave him ideas to further his own intuition or ideas and stuff. So that's the power of music, really. Is that we can change things by, obviously, love, music, and all these energies are more intense now than they were. I mean, we talk about love now as a real entity of energy, which in the 50s, 60s, we weren't sure about, but we know that use of love in a positive way, we know it does stuff. We know it's a positive energy, like electricity. So I think we're living in a confusing time, of course, but I think we've got so many opportunities now to carve whatever future we want. You know? A cool question.
When you created the riff for Who Really Got Me, did you realise at the time when you were recording that it was going to be so influential? And how do you feel about it all these years later?
What was interesting, obviously it was Ray that wrote the riff on the piano. And when I transposed it to the guitar, that we both realised there was something really unusual about the whole thing. And the chord shifts and the modulations or whatever. And we knew there was something unusual, so we tried to pursue our lights. And I thought Ray was inspired to write that riff. But, you know, it's like, that's why we have to allow each other to pursue our, whatever it is we want to pursue. You know?
If it was his riff and your sound and they came together and that was...
Well, yeah,
that's what resulted. The rest we know.
That's pretty cool idea.
Yeah.
We're working, really.
It is. The lady in the Kinks t-shirt.
Yay.
Yes.
Hi, Dave.
Dave,
can I just first say that this is so amazing for me because I first met you in 1974 with my dad at a football match. You and Ray were on the Showbiz 11s in Basingstoke at Camrose football ground, and I was 14.
Oh.
And you made such an impact on me. I wasn't a Kinks fan then, but by God, afterwards, when you and Ray came up to me and said, "Are you our youngest Kinks fan?" I said, "I'm into the Osmonds." Ray said to me one day, "You come back to me and tell me how much you like our music," and I Jolly well did, and I've followed you ever since, and I tell you, you are the best.
Oh, that's
You're
lovely.
absolutely the best.
I think that. Well done, that's right.
The chap there with the beard. Yeah.
This young lady here, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
I just wanted to say something very similar to her. I'm a millennial myself, so much, like almost 50 years younger than you. I just want to say, your music just inspires me so much, and your style. You're one of the most stylish people in all of classic rock. I just want to say that, and reading about your story, it just inspired me to, love and accept who I am as a bisexual. I just wanted to tell you that.
Yeah, cool. Only you.
Yeah.
Hey Dave, lovely to meet you. I just want to say, as a guitarist, I think you're superb. The first album I heard by the Kinks was Arthur, and I just fell in love with it. And you talk about music transporting you somewhere, that album takes me somewhere else, and that's absolutely my favourite guitar performance from you. I think you're incredible on it.
Oh,
wow.
bless you, man.
What's your favourite, what's your most proud album? What's the album you adore the most as a guitarist for you?
I do like Arthur, actually. It's one of my favourite, but one of my favourite, you can't have a favourite. They're all like...
Give me a few.
What's your best favourite?
Best favourite?
Yeah. Or your favourite
I
best?
think one of my favourite pieces of Kinks music is Schoolboys in Disgrace. And I think the track Headmaster is about so many different things. It's like about the concept of the song and the nature of how we felt when we did it, and that feeling of we knew we had something unusual and good and inspiring, and it was a magical time that was. But there's been so many points of time throughout time that have really helped me grow as a person, even bad times, that terrible saying, even the bad times are good. No, I don't believe that. But even the bad times can really help you move towards something else.
Thank you. The chap in the red shirt.
Thank you. Dave, firstly, privileged to meet you tonight. Really honoured to be here. Can I ask, is it true or is it an urban myth that you took a razor blade to the speaker tone to get that distortion sound on usually?
No, I don't know if I'm getting old or I'm going deaf. Could you say that a bit louder?
Yeah, sorry. Is it true or is it an urban myth that you took a razor blade to the speaker tone to get the distortion sound on You Really Got Me?
What about it?
Is it true?
Of course I did. I document it very well, or we document it very well in my latest book.
Page 30, I think. It's all there.
And I can't get closer to explaining it without actually doing it than that. So.
Well, the book was only published to me. I've not read it. I look forward to reading it.
It's all in there. It's all in there.
It's all in there, mate.
Thank you.
It's still got the amp.
Has he still got the amp?
Oh God, don't. I wish. Whatever happened to it? None of you got.
Thank you. Firstly, it's a real pleasure to get to talk to you. Could I ask a question about albums like The Village Green Preservation Society and Arthur, and that perhaps didn't commercially do what your albums have done previously, but obviously are artistically phenomenal? Is there a sense of delayed gratification that they've found an audience since, or is it so far in the past that you it is what it is in your mind?
Yeah, I think a very intelligent question. I really don't know what to say. I don't like to analyse things that we've done too much. And I leave an analytical shit to Ray, and he can disappear up his own arse for it. I'm only joking. But I think your question is wonderful. Only wish I could answer it. Did you get that?
I think so. So at the beginning you're talking about, yeah?
So yeah, like what age
What age did you start practicing the guitar? Did you practice every day? Did you and Ray sort of have a conversation about that?
Yeah.
How it worked?
Yeah, I think the thing was that we both stopped playing guitar after we heard Dwayne Eddy and Chet Atkins, and all these great. And I think Dwayne Eddy was a real innovator because he made it sound easy, and that's what you need when you're trying to learn. It's like with jazz, you know, you dissect jazz and make it very slow. It's easier to learn the runs and licks when it's slow. And you get all flash and dead fast. You know, I think Ray and I encouraged each other very much with guitar and guitar types. But of course you have to realise there were so many influences, like country influences, Earl Scruggs, Lester Flats, and all these great American country players, and the jazz players. And Barney Kessel was a big influence, although I couldn't play in that manner, and I had to learn. Jim Hall was a big influence on me as a guitar player, because he played guitar like he was framing things, if you know what I mean, rhythmically. He framed explained a lot of music to me through that framing. I thought he was a very influential musician, and but I loved everything. I loved Miles Davis. There's too much music to be influenced by. It's wonderful. But obviously Ray and I helped each other. Even by trying to avoid each other. It helped a lot of ways.
There's a man in a white hat.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Nice to see you here tonight, Ray. Dave, sorry.
I'm glad I didn't hear a word of that.
Thank God for that. There's been speculation over recent years that you'd be doing some work with your brother and Mick Avery. If it's not so intrusive, is there any truth in that? Have you been doing some work with the rest of the Kinks?
Kind of. I mean, me and Ray often, there's so many bits and pieces that we worked on that form a kind of background. It's not done quite yet until the editing is not quite finished yet. So there are possibilities that we can, it's not done yet. Hopefully.
And will it be done?
What?
And will it be done?
Who knows?
Good answer.
Thank you.
Man at the back there between the pillars. No, that's you, yeah?
All right.
Yeah.
So, you mentioned a lot of your people that have inspired you that are American, and I'm American. But I was wondering, since there's a fair amount of levity laced through the work of the Kinks, was George Formby at all any sort of inspiration to you when you were young?
Of course. I mean, we were influenced by everything. I mean, mainly American music was a big part of our life growing up. But George Formby was a fantastic influence. He taught us how to humour, how to make life interesting through humour and storytelling. That's a crucial part of any observer or writer or musician. It's humour.
Thank you.
Chap there?
Hi Dave, what were your first impressions of America when the Kinks first toured over there in 1965?
First what?
Sorry, can you speak up? Sorry.
Hi Dave, what was your first impressions of America when you first toured
I
there?
thought
The
this
Kinks.
when I thought that, when I heard all those great records, Elvis, Julie Lewis and all the fun music, I got to America and I thought, oh yeah, cheers. Get him telling me what to do. Yeah, Ray and I grew up listening to all this great American music, the blues and country, western, and loads of show music, and as I said, the jazz and loads of stuff. But when we actually went to the States, I was quite disappointed because none of the music was on the radio.
They were playing the Beatles, I think you say in the book.
Yeah, he wants to listen to the Beatles.
Whatever happened to them?
I don't know. I knew it never would last. No, obviously the Beatles were a big influence on everybody. And but when we started, we were more interested in what we were doing than what the Beatles were doing. I think that was an important thing for us. And but Americans wanted the Europeans or English bands quickly, but it wasn't easy because there was quite a. I think they thought that. What do they call it? British invasion. It's like. It was quite intimidating to a lot of older Americans, I think. And that kind of puzzled me a little bit.
Well, we're running a short of time, so perhaps a couple. Yeah.
Hey, hi Dave, how you doing? All right.
Cheers, mate.
So when you recorded Phobia, did you ever think that would ever be the last ever album that you ever did?
It's interesting that you mentioned Phobia because one chap asked about what was one of my favourite Kinks members, and I mentioned Schoolboys in Disgrace, and then I meant to say as well, I thought Phobia was one of the Kinks' best albums.
My favourite, anyway. So.
And Clichés as a Award, it's great. It's one of Ray's best songs, tracks. And I love that record. What was the question?
Did you ever think that would be the last ever recorded album?
Not the time. Not to you don't know. But
It was.
yeah, it was. But you know.
I think we've got time for one more. Right at the back. Yeah.
Being an Arsenal fan.
Sorry, can you talk right up? Sorry.
Being an Arsenal fan.
Yeah. For my sins.
Well, your career with the Who, when you first started off, quite parallel. So was your
was your view on the Who similar to Tottenham?
Was your view of the Who? We can squeeze one more in very quickly. Yeah.
Tell me something about the song Strangers, anything about it.
Oh, that's good, thank you. Yeah, it was, I was going through a difficult time during writing of that song, and I thought, you know those times when you're sitting around and thinking, what the fucking hell, what am I doing here? What is this? And like, you know, we've all sat down and thought to ourselves at some point, what am I doing here? What are we doing here? You know, what is this weird planet and all that stuff? And it was a result of a lot of soul searching. And I came to this determination in my mind that we can't do anything without each other. And we learn more when we help each other. And it was a song that grew out of those sort of thoughts, feelings. Thank you. Cheers, guys. That's great. Thank you very much. Up the Arsenal.
Can I just say, in a few minutes, Dave will be signing a books at the back where you walked in. If you can stand in line to the left, Dave will sign. Just to say, Dave, I can only sign the copies of the new books. He can't sign a Kinks records, I'm afraid, because he wants to get home before 3 o'clock in the morning. So he can only sign copies of the new book, I'm afraid. But if you just give us a few minutes, he'll be there. Thank you very much.
Hello guys, if you were sat down for that, the queue is already at the back of the stage, so if you could just be patient where you were sat. Some of my colleagues will if you want to get some fresh air, feel free to come back.